Hi, my name is Alexis Uria, and I did my presentation on feedback loops in the non-gravid female reproductive system. So non-gravid just refers to a female that is not pregnant. Females produce gametes in monthly cycles, known as the menstrual cycle, and it's marked by a 3 to 7 day period of bleeding referred to as menses or menstruation. The menstrual cycle can be outlined by changes that occur in both the ovarian cycle or the uterine cycle. Both mirror each other and are broken down into 3 separate phases. The ovarian cycle consists of the follicular phase, ovulation, and the luteal phase, and the uterine cycle consists of the menses, the proliferative phase, and the secretory phase. The menstrual cycle is influenced by both reproductive hormones and feedback pathways, which we're going to hone in on today. Negative feedback is the vast majority of the menstrual cycle. Estrogen and progesterone inhibit the hypothalamus and pituitary gland from releasing hormones, whereas positive feedback only occurs during days 12 to 14 of the cycle, and estrogen stimulates the hypothalamus and pituitary to release hormones. So the ovarian cycle is broken down into 3 phases, as we already went over. The follicular phase begins on the first day of menstruation, and it is primarily influenced by negative feedback. As you can see in the first box in the picture on the left, the earlier to mid follicular phase has increased estrogen levels, which inhibit or reduce the production of GnRH, FSH, and LH. There's also AMH, which inhibits the production of too many follicles developing at once and allows the release of more estradiol. There is some positive feedback occurring during this phase, and the increasing estrogen levels also stimulate the secretion of more estrogen from the follicle. The endometrial arteries then begin to constrict, which further leads to menstruation. The next stage is ovulation, which is marked by the end of the green box in the picture. It's marked by a surge of LH, and there's also rising levels of FSH, but LH skyrockets. It's mostly positive feedback here. This is days 12 to 14. The anterior pituitary releases LH and FSH, which stimulates the maturation of a growing follicle. The growing follicle then produces high levels of estradiol, which stimulates GnRH secretion by the hypothalamus, which subsequently stimulates secretion of more LH and FSH from the anterior pituitary and results in ovulation. To just go over a brief review of the anatomy, the uterus, where fertilized eggs implant and develop, has 3 layers of tissue. There's an outer layer, a middle layer, and then the inner layer, which is referred to as the endometrium. And the thickness of the endometrium changes based on where a female is in the menstruation cycle, and it is during this ovulation that some of the top layer of cells begin to slough off, and the menses is really defined as the secretion of the top layer of the endometrium sloughing off. To circle back, during the ovulation phase, there is some negative feedback occurring. FSH secretion is suppressed slightly by inhibin, another hormone that's produced. Next, moving on, we go to the luteal phase, and this consists of primarily negative feedback. Increased estrogen and progesterone levels inhibit the further production of LH and FSH from the anterior pituitary, as well as GnRH from the hypothalamus. We see estrogen and progesterone levels decreasing, and the corpus luteum dies. The endometrium resumes development at this point. At the late luteal phase, there's a decreased estrogen and progesterone level now, and this reverses the negative feedback loop, which causes the secretion of LH and FSH to increase once again. After the corpus luteum dies, it becomes inactive and is referred to as the corpus albicans, and then hormone production decreases, so blood vessels on the surface of the endometrium contract and cells die. This is when the surface layer of the endometrium begins to slough off and menstruation, the menses period, begins. And then we circle back to the follicular phase, which starts on the first day of this menstruation. Next, moving on to the uterine cycle, it really mirrors the ovarian cycle closely in its 3 steps. However, it's broken down just a little bit further. The menses corresponds to the follicular phase of the ovarian cycle. Here in the top left, you can see the phases of the uterine cycle and the menses. This lines up directly to the follicular phase, and then the proliferative phase, which is next, mirrors the ovulation, and the secretory phase in the top right mirrors the luteal phase. So during the menses cycle, steadily increasing estrogen inhibits the production of LH and FSH, and inhibin blocks the production of GnRH. Next, the proliferative phase, it incorporates the latter part of the follicular phase and ovulation from the ovarian cycle, and it's marked by a significant increase of the estrogen, which causes the surge of LH that we saw previously, and a slight increase of FSH. Lastly, the secretory phase, which mirrors the luteal phase in the ovarian cycle, is marked by decreasing estrogen and inhibin levels, which decrease LH and FSH. There's also a surge of progesterone here, which is critical to this cycle. It's responsible for the maintenance of the secretory endometrium, and decreased hormone levels cause the blood levels in the surface layer of the endometrium that we talked about before to slough off. This is due to contraction, and the cells die, and after the corpus luteum dies, 14 days after ovulation, the endometrium begins to slough off its surface layer, which marks the start of menstruation. In the top right here, you can also just see the 3 phases, including the follicular phase and ovulation are combined together here, and this is mirroring the uterine cycle stages, which can be seen. For my study aid, I thought it would be good to recall the graphs that show both the hormone levels and the stages of the ovary during both the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. So in the left photo, this is a graph of the ovarian cycle, and if you could fill in the top 3 phases, and then also match which hormone belongs to which of the boxes that are on the graph. And the same with the uterine cycle, 3 phases, and then match the hormone with the missing boxes. And the answers are here. Thank you.